So this court is certainly aware of Mr. Soul's status. Mr. Soul at this time has three cases, before the court that were previously before the court. On all of those cases, he was pending a 1077 evaluation with Western State Hospital. On all of those cases, despite the age of the cases, we are still pending that evaluation. I think at this time, I am certainly going to assume, and I'm going to ask Ms. Gaffney, that this case will also be a case that you're making the same request on.
Correct, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. So I think that we're not going to be accepting a plea today because Mr. Soul's competency has been in question for the last year plus on the associated cases we have. So I'm not going to be entering a plea at this time. I think that at this point, the consideration will be simply the entry of release conditions for Mr. Soul. So this time I am going to be hearing from the city attorney, Ms. Carmy. I'm going to hear from Ms. Gaffney regarding conditions of release. Go ahead, Ms. Carmy.
Yes, Your Honor, as the court record and history is clear here, this is a pattern of behavior. I know in speaking to La Center law enforcement that the victim in this case is the same victim who's already protected with an NCO in another case, or an anti-harassment order, my understanding is, although this is a new charge, there have been several other incidents that have not been sent over for prosecution. But looking at the history, there's to the city's perspective, a clear indication that this court's orders will not be followed. These victims, at least the female victim in this case, is very fearful that it would escalate to physical harm. I feel like the only position the city can take is that Mr. Soul needs to be taken into custody awaiting the 1077 evaluation in this case. I believe that there is a great risk that a violent offense against the neighbors could occur given the history of repeated behavior here. If the court is not inclined to do that, we would ask to increase pretrial supervision from enhanced to intensive.
Ms. Gaffney.
Yes, Your Honor. My understanding is when he was in district court, because he was taken into custody on the most recent charges, that they did release him, but that they moved his supervision up a level. He is supervised by Stephanie Stevenson and also by Josh Wilson. Mr. Soul checked in with Stephanie and this week after release, and also with Josh Wilson. I am in constant contact with my client. I talked to him last week. I talked to him the week before. I talked to his family 2 weeks ago. I talked to his family this week. I did speak with my client yesterday, and asked him to have the swastika flag taken down, which my understanding is it is taken down from my client, and that the swastika on the side of the house is also been painted over. My client showing me the paint on his hand that he did do that. I asked him to do that yesterday afternoon. This court obviously has his attention. He is the caretaker for his blind 81 or 82-year-old father. And I am trying to work with Ms. Carmy to see if we could get through Turnbull a quicker competency evaluation. I understand the court's concern. I understand the neighbor's concern. But Mr. Soul realizes what he has to do, and he is trying in the best he can to comply with this court's order.
And Your Honor, the city just wants to put something on the record because the defense brought up some potential First Amendment issues. The city's request is not that he be taken into custody because of any swastikas or allegations of swastikas. This is based on the report that a slingshot was used to go through the protected party's vehicle, cracking her windshield, which the city does view as escalating behavior from the noise harassment that was previously taken place.
Usually I don't take a break like that in the middle of a hearing. I want to just make sure I make a record as to what's going on here. So The earliest of the charges that are before our court involving Mr. Soul and his neighbors date back to April of 2021. That was a situation where he was shining lights in the windows of children. He threatened, allegedly, the mother with hedge trimming shears. So that is April 21st, 2021. We then have December 6th, 2021, where he is threatening to smash the headlights of another neighbor's vehicle. We have August 7th, 2022, where he's alleged to be shooting fireworks at residences. And at that time, if my recollection serves me, I took Mr. Soul into custody. And the Clark County Jail released him, I think before he even arrived. And we have the most recent allegation on April 23rd, 2023, of shooting a slingshot and damaging vehicles. So this is a 2-year time frame between the first incident on April 21st, 2021, and the most recent incident on April 23rd, 2023. 2 years. So what my situation is I have to pretend that those neighbors that have been putting up with you for the last 2 years we're sitting here, I think about it like my children. If my neighbor was threatening to smash my headlights, allegedly, if my neighbor was threatening my wife with hedge trimming shears, allegedly, if my children were having lights shined in their bedroom windows, allegedly, if fireworks were being shot at my residence, not on the 4th of July, in August, allegedly, if my vehicles were being damaged, in each one of these circumstances, the allegation is you have some manner of weapon or are threatening some manner of physical violence every time across the board. I don't care what your political persuasions are. I don't care what your beliefs are. I believe you are dangerous. And I believe you are dangerous to the community. I believe you are dangerous to your neighbors. And I think that any judicial officer who sits here and releases you with this amount of information is subject to a massive lawsuit when you act out this violence. And I believe without proper professional help, you will act out this violence. You can shake your head at me all you want. I have 2 years worth of records. So Mr. Soul, you are going into custody. I'm going to impose bail on the new case in the amount of $25,000. I would ask Ms. Carmy that the proper documents providing the for the mental restoration of Mr. Soul are filed. I'm fine with signing those today. My hope is that we get Western State down here to determine his competency, but he is absolutely positively not going to victimize his neighbors any further.
Would your honor consider $5,000 bail?
No, not at all.
I'll get that ordered right now.
Thank you.
I'll sign off with you, Ms. Carmy.
Yep.
I'll let you do that now.